Filed under more twists that everybody saw coming, it turns out that it was Sammy who told Ivan about their plan to move in on Magnus. She's crying over the entire thing, knowing the exact ramifications of exactly what she's done. Despite this, she still tries to claim the moral superiority over the situation by claiming that she did it to protect Elm. Hello and welcome to Precontation Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong, and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of the Color Theory series by Ashley Bustamante. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 25. Sometime later, Eva, Blake, and Elle meet up in the school gym to practice white magic together. Eva tells the readers that they've practiced with the others before, but that everybody was too busy today, or as I like to call it, having a huge ensemble cast is dragging this book down, and having every single named character in the scene would be a lot. Anyway, as you can imagine, it's not like they've suddenly become amazing at white magic. Elm chucks yellow dodgeballs at them, but it doesn't exactly do a whole lot. And then Ava accidentally takes a dive off the bleachers. Why she was standing up there is beyond me, but whatever. Elm and Blake save her by creating a green net, which she thinks is impressive. She then randomly decides that if augmenters can heal physical wounds and mentalists can get inside of people's minds, then orange magic should be able to help fix people's mental health issues. Elm is obviously uncertain about testing this out, even under the care of Dr. Iris, but Ava is adamant and goes on to say that it could help a lot of people if this turns out to be true. Dr. Iris is kind of on Elm's side about the entire thing. She thinks that it's too dangerous and that Ava should give her condition time. However, in the end, Ava convinces both of them to try it and promises to speak up if she experiences literally any discomfort whatsoever. So they start, and then it's literally over. The narration describes it like a bubble popping inside of Ava's mind, and then her thoughts are clear and normal once again, which is kind of frustrating because there's been all of this buildup about Celine's memories being inside of her, and literally one paragraph of trying to fix her, and it's resolved. Dr. Iris and Dr. Root are excited about what this could mean for the future of mental health, but Ava is thinking more short-term here, specifically how they can help free everybody trapped by mentalists inside the dome. Ava later meets up with the others and tells them about being freed from Celine's thoughts. However, most of them didn't know about how she'd been suffering this entire time, and are shocked and horrified to find out, but relieved. Sarah says that she's accepted Ivan's job offer to train to become a full healer, and Gemma says that she's accepted his offer to become a stylist. As the others congratulate the two of them on this, Ava can't help but note a few weird reactions and wonder how many of the others are seriously considering Ivan's offer. As the group starts to head off, they get called to come inside of a nightclub, so they go in. The loud music and tattooed dancers aren't exactly Ava's scene, but she dances with them anyway. In this moment, it's easy to imagine staying here. Easy to picture living in this little utopia without a care in the world. Why shouldn't we stay? We could follow our dreams or find new ones if that's what it takes. Back inside the barrier, there are no guarantees for any of us. I'm starting to understand what my parents were talking about. First off, Danger Will Robinson. Second, going back to something I said earlier, but exactly how long do you think that is going to be until Celine decides to march in on Neo Prism? Even by Ava's own admission, she thinks that it's probably going to be sooner rather than later that Celine figures out how to leave the dome. But as she looks at she kind of snaps out of it, and then she tells him about how she'd been thinking of staying but changed her mind when she thought about him. He tells her that he shouldn't be the deciding factor in what she does, but she goes on to explain that it's not simply Elm, it's the way that he'd been in prison for a decade. It's how there's probably others who are being held forced to power the barrier. The two of them agree while it's fine to take a break, they really need to refocus their energy on what they're going to do about Celine and Magnus proper. But Ava also expresses a lot of doubts because people are leaving the little group. However, she quickly shoves that aside and says that they can't force people to stay. Even if it's the two of them, they will bring down Celine. Chapter 26. Later, Ava tells her parents the good news about her brain. They're happy to hear this and pleasantly surprised to hear that it was all because of orange magic. However, their good mood quickly sours and Ava says that she's going to refocus her energy on taking down the dome. You have to understand, Ava, that not everybody wants the barrier taken down. In fact, most of us don't. I get the feeling that most everybody ran away from the city and then decided that it was no longer their problem. After all, they had a decade to come up with a plan and they've done literally nothing. In a lot of these young adult dystopias, I always wonder why it is that it's up to literal children to take down the government. Here, it's painfully obvious that the reason why the children are doing this is simply because the adults are shoving their fingers into their ears and pretending like the problem doesn't exist. Especially now that a huge group has gotten out, do they honestly think that Celine will be content to sit by and let them be now that they've gotten out? They're mental if they seriously believe that. This naturally leads to a huge fight between Ava and her parents. Mr. and Mrs. Locke are quick to remind their daughter that even if people weren't taking up arms against the mentalists, they were complicit in allowing the genocide to happen. That the barrier isn't going to come down, everybody will realize the error of their ways, and then all three colors will sing Kumbaya. Mrs. Locke suggests that they should work to free the mentalists and then leave the city to be destroyed from the inside out, which is honestly a pretty great compromise if you ask me, except that nobody mentions the rest of the children who were still trapped inside. You know, the people who were in preschool during the original genocide or those born after. However, sitting back and letting their poor choices crumble Magnus doesn't exactly make for a good story, or a fast one either. Ava obviously has issue with that, but is quick to leave after. She runs over to Elm's apartment where she uses her mentalist powers to tell him to open the door. He heard her voice but tells her that it wasn't strong enough to actually force him to do anything, and the only reason why he opened the door is because it was her. Ava tries to hug him, desperate for a little bit of normalcy, but he steps aside. She's dejected until she realizes that Elm wasn't home alone. A bunch of the named characters are in his apartment, and Ava naturally wants to know why. They say that they feel like the wool is being pulled over their eyes and that everybody is freaking delusional here, that nobody outside of their group seems to care what happens inside of Magnus so long as it doesn't bother them, which again at this point is not a matter of if. There's practically a doomsday clock ticking down to midnight in the corner here. How long do you think that it'll be until Celine and her forces march into Neoprism, and why do you think that it'll be before the end of the book? The group agrees that the key to their success in taking down Celine will be secondary color magics, but they also think that they need to keep their activities a secret. One of them asks why, stating that Ivan doesn't seem to care either way. Ava explains that Ivan only lets them use the gem under the belief that secondary color magics could benefit everybody, and that as soon as he finds out what they're really up to, he'll be quick to shut them down. The book glosses over them making plans for the future. After a moment, Blake gets angry at Elm, but then confesses that Elm has been helping to train him against mentalist attacks. Meanwhile, Blake has been teaching Elm how to use his blue magic. Both explain that it's in case one of them falls, somebody will be there to take care of Ava. However, Ava is not into their sexist macho nonsense. She says that this simply isn't about doing things on her own, but rather not needing to rely on somebody to help her, but then they all agree that they have to look out for each other. Chapter 27. Making the plans was enough to help push everybody into studying harder. Eventually, Bree and Elm were able to use green magic to make a squirrel. Kato and Blanca used purple magic to turn Blanca's arm into the texture of a kickball. When Ava wonders about orange magic, Elm reminds her that they've already done that by ridding her of Celine's thoughts. As the book rounds the bend for the final quarter, Ava says that they're going back into the dome tomorrow. I would say that 3/4 of this book had been them preparing to face off against Celine, except that it's 100% not true, and I think everybody knows it. The first half of this book was about the group squatting in a cave. By Ava's own admission, they didn't have a plan. Literally nothing longer term than a few days in the future, even. They were struggling to get enough food to eat. Forget about taking down Celine, the group was practically doomed from the get-go simply because they were eventually going to starve to death. Even when they got to Neoprism, I thought that something was actually going to happen, but no, the book continued to flail around and go literally nowhere. It was only starting from chapter 26 when a bunch of named characters finally bothered to say, hey, what gives? Why aren't we doing anything? I'd also like to remind everybody that Vivid also suffered from this. There was a whole lot of nothing for 3/4 of the book before a big climax in the last quarter. So anyway, the group is going back into Magnus in the morning. Ava goes on to explain to the readers that it's obvious that peace isn't an option. Not mentioned is how brainwashed everybody is. But at this point, I'm not quite sure that it even matters. It's raining, and she decides that she needs to walk in the rain. So she goes out with her umbrella and then notices standing in a weird little dry bubble. He says that he's been practicing his blue magic, which is why he's not getting wet. They hold each other, and they confess their love for each other between kisses. Early the next morning, so early that it's still technically night by most people's standards, the group sneaks out from the apartments to meet up at the gym before going back into Magnus. However, to the surprise of literally nobody, Ivan shows up. Ava can't help but think that somebody ratted them out. Chapter 28. Filed under more twists that everybody saw coming, it turns out that it was Sammy who told Ivan about their plan to move in on Magnus. She's crying over the entire thing, knowing the exact ramifications of exactly what she's done. Despite this, she still tries to claim the moral superiority over the situation by claiming that she did it to protect Elm. As the entire group is immediately chucked into prison, gray jumpsuits and anti-magic handcuffs and all, I have to wonder why Ivan is so quick to lock them up and throw away the key. I want to ask about stuff like due process, but then laughed over my desperate attempt to introduce logic to this silly story. Ivan and everybody else in Neo Prison might have escaped the wrath of Celine by running away, but most of them are complicit in her war crimes. They literally have been doing nothing to try and stop her, not 10 years ago, and for sure not now. Of course, the system that sits back and allows literal genocide over a third of the population doesn't care about stuff like the justice system. As Ava and myself had predicted, Ivan doesn't take kindly to the thought of anybody trying to get back into Magnus to stop Celine. He'd rather throw away the literal prison key than to ever admit that there is a war in Bossing. in Magnus. Ava tries to call him out. She asks him how long he thinks that his flimsy house of cards he's built could possibly stand, especially now that more and more of the public know how easy it is to get back into Magnus. Ivan implies that Ava's group isn't the first he's locked up. No mention of how Celine could possibly come marching into Neo Prism at literally any time. Asks how long Ivan intends to keep them locked up, and Ivan mentions something about a trial, which almost seems like a bizarre afterthought, especially when you consider that the group has already been processed for prison like they've already been found guilty. They had to hand over all of their possessions and put on prison jumpsuits. As I said, the idea of a justice system working here is practically a joke at this point. Later, Mr. and Mrs. Locke visit their daughter in prison. When they ask why Ava did what she did, Ava calls them and Ivan out on their terrible behavior. And then because they fail to grasp exactly what she's getting at, she reminds them that when the going got tough, they literally abandoned their own child in favor of saving their own backsides. Her parents then tell her that they talked to Ivan, that the leader was willing to overlook this transgression so long as the group basically becomes blind, obedient slaves and forgets about Celine. Again, Ava calls them out, that Neo Prism isn't home. A week later, everybody's spirits are naturally low. As the guards come in with food, asks that Ava watch something he figured out how to do. He lifts a spoon up a few inches. When Ava asks how, he explains that the anti-magic cuffs are only intended for a singular type of magic. Tertiary color magics are apparently so unusual or unexpected that they never once accounted for them. And I can't say that I'm surprised about this either. Ava briefly thinks about using her mentalist abilities on the guards, but almost immediately discards the idea. She's been more focused on other aspects of her yellow magic, mainly the dream part, but Elm tells her that the two of them can practice while they're being held. It's not like they have anything better to do. But he also believes that they could probably summon up some green magic and make more invisibility devices and simply leave. Ava likes that better, since not only could they leave, but they could also get back into Magnus. Over the next few days, tries to explain to Ava how they can make a new invisibility locket, but the problem is that they need yellow stones to power them, so this honestly seems like a way less viable option. In between explaining the mechanics of those invisibility devices to Ava, Elm talks her through how to spot people who would be good to mentally manipulate. Never force somebody to do something that they would never do, for example. There are 3 guards, but Elm wants Ava to go after the meanest one in particular. He says that this is because he can sense that Charlie isn't sure that the group belongs there, whereas Elena and Max are 100% convinced. They think that they can convince Charlie to let them into the room where the items went. They decide that maybe they can lean on the fact that Charlie has a young daughter, to have the youngest in the group lie about how Ava's locket belonged to her dead mom. This is interrupted by Charlie saying that Elm has a visitor. It's Sammy, who has been coming every single day to try and see him. Elm says that he won't see her again. As Charlie leaves, he says that Sammy's simply going to keep coming back, which, too bad, so sad. She played a stupid game, and her reward is to no longer be friends with Elm. Over the next few days, the group begins to mentally prime Charlie for Ava to help guide him along further. They ask him why the group is there, and then question if Ivan isn't doing something similar, implying that he's kind of too dumb to really know anything about the benefactors, asking why there's no law in Neo Prism about groups practicing magic together. Later, as the group is heading out for yard time, Elm pulls Charlie aside and asks for a favor. Ava uses yellow magic on him, reassuring him that Elm is nothing but a harmless young adult who got caught up in something so much bigger than he is. Elm spins a yarn about Bree's dead mom, about missing her mom's locket. Again, Ava uses her magic on him to make him think about his own daughter, to imply that Bree is so young, caught up in something that she couldn't begin to understand. Charlie agrees to Elm's request and takes the two of them into the personal item processing room. Once in there, Elm manages to use his blue magic to levitate a few small yellow stones to Ava, who pockets them. But then Charlie wants to check the locket to make sure that it's nothing suspicious, and Elm is like, it's only a picture of her mom. Ava panics and thinks about her own mother, which only sends her into more of a panic, but Charlie thankfully buys the illusion and he hands the locket over. I'd like to end the chapter by saying that these literal children have been held without bail for at least a couple of weeks. Also, no mention of that trial that Ivan promised them, nor did the narration ever once mention the word lawyer. Justice system? What justice system? Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book snarks, always free and updated every morning. The only edit to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same things on Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more book snarks starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trail, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. Also, a huge shout out to Bunker Bash for making a sizable one-time donation. Thanks! If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my snarks so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well. Just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!